Hey gang, John Bacarella here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Thursday, July 8th, and it's been about 2 weeks since we did a fishing report. Man, the weather has been absolutely crazy. For you guys trying to get out there, I know if it's not been windy, it's been 90 degrees, or it's been thunderstorms, or it's been thunderstorms and windy and 90 degrees. But we've had very few days actually in the last 2 weeks that have been very hospitable fishing weather. But on the days that the guys were able to get out, they have caught some fish. So, and we kind of know where the fish are right now. It's just a matter of having the weather for you guys to get out there and chase them down. So we'll talk a little bit. We'll start up like I normally do up on the St. Clair River. Only I'm going to talk a little bit about some different angles that you can try up there on the St. Clair River. I know there's a lot of you guys that really like to jig, and I know vertical jigging with the jigs and the plastics has been up and down all season, although the guys casting from shore with jigs and, you know, some of the plastics have still been doing good at night. But the guys out in the boats that like the vertical jig have not been doing as well. And I keep getting reminded, I've got a few customers that come in and some guides that fish up there on the St. Clair, especially in the slightly slower current areas, jigging like with number 7s and number 9 jigging Rapalas, number 2 moonshine, shiver minnows, blade baits, and spoons. And so I just thought I would bring that up to you guys, that is definitely an option this time of the year. And sometimes that will outproduce everything you can throw at them in the boat, and that includes night crawler harnesses, which you guys are still doing really good on crawler harnesses. So just wanted to bring that up, that those are definitely options, and sometimes it's tackle that you guys have already got, you just don't have it in the boat with you. So if you switch over and run those jigging rods and then put those different baits down, you know, they're all vertical baits, and if you're not in the main current fishing super deep water, you can get away with fishing those baits and be really effective, especially working down those weed lines and stuff like in the middle channel and south channel. So keep that in mind if you're going to go out there chasing the walleyes, and get you back into that vertical game, fishing up and down versus the boring, you know, dragging the harnesses. So also up on that St. Clair River action, one of those lesser fish that generally doesn't get any love, but when they get up to like 31.5 inches, like my buddy Jeff Nill got, these sheephead are a hoot. And there was a kids tournament up there this weekend as well, and we were selling a lot of crayfish, and it was for one simple reason: trying to catch those big giant sheephead up there on the river. Same thing goes back here at the Metro Park in Black Creek and out off the point. There are some monstrous sheephead in right now, and if you really want to have, you know, a hard fighting fish from shore in July, it's kind of hard to beat these big sheephead. They'll also hit blade baits. They'll hit like small flukes on jigs is another way we'll fish them, especially back there in the Metro Park. But they are pretty aggressive predators. They'll hit crankbaits, blade baits, and I mean, they'll hit spoons and everything else if you can get it down into the strike zone. Most of the time they are going to be down closer to the bottom, but they will come up and feed, you know, mid-depth range, as a lot of you walleye trollers know. It's not uncommon to catch them, you know, halfway up in the water column trolling bandits or crawler harnesses, and we've caught plenty of them fishing for steelhead and cohos too over on Lake Erie. So you know, one of those lesser fish, but for the kiddies, when you get those kids out there and you get like a 15-pound sheephead on the end of the line, it's a blast. It's love to see those fish put smiles on kids' face and on adults' faces as well. Coming back down to the lake, walleye bite is still going on out there in the middle of the lake, from the St. Clair Light all the way up into the South Channel. That's been going strong. Crawler harnesses, guys pulling bandits with spoons. I've been meaning to mention that for a couple of weeks. That's an old school tactic that we used to use down on Erie many, many moons ago, although back then we used to pull usually wiggleworts or Hottentots with the spoons. But those walleye spoons and a bandit, you know, on a 3-way dropper, they're fantastic. They really get those fish's attention out there. That 3-way acts as a point that it'll actually collect weeds and keep both baits free of getting fouled up, so you get more time in the water, especially like with all the mayfly casings and stuff, where they'll get down really easy and bunk up a crankbait or bunk up a night crawler harness. When you get that 3-way up there and that crank working together, that tends to keep those baits cleaner just a little bit longer, and the more time you're in the water with a clean bait means more fish in the box. So That's the walleye bite out there. There's going to be plenty of walleyes too between that channel and the main shoreline on those weed beds. I call it out in the middle grounds out there, about 3.5 miles out or so. Find those weed beds out there, and especially on the windier days when those weed beds get knocked down. Did you guys know that a lot of times out here when we get those north blows, what tends to happen is that current velocity picks up out here in the lake. Those weeds get forced down because of the flow out there, and what I believe happens was once those weeds get knocked down a little bit, even if they get knocked down 50%, right? That's 50% less cover for everything, for the bait fish, for the perch, and so those predators get out and feed, plus they get less light penetration. So anyways, we should have a little bit of a north wind blowing coming in here on this cold front we've got coming in right now, and that could set up those conditions out there for that little bit of a north wind or even a heavy north wind, and knocking those weed beds down and getting those fish moving around in those, you know, this midsummer kind of. A lot of you guys think it's like a doldrum, but the bites are still going on. It's just you got to get out there and fish where those fish are. Another tidbit I had a friend tell me this week out in that same area out by the channel. They were noticing a pattern that's kind of a cool pattern, is that with all this rain we've had, and we get all these big influxes of runoff into the lake, whether it's coming in from the Canadian side or the American side, we're going to get algae blooms out there. And sometimes you will see localized algae blooms. You'll see big mats of algae and other junk out there in the lake. And he was fishing an area out there that was like 100-yard mat. And all around the edges of that mat, they were pulling cranks, and they were taking a lot of walleye. So that big mat was actually like, you know, like a big old floating raft out there. Probably there was bait fish under it in that darker water, and it was just, there were a lot of fish around that mat. So that's another thing that you can, if you see out there, it's worth a try working some of those big mats out there, just because they give those fish cover. So it's you know, one of those things you don't want to overlook. Another thing, the smallmouth fishing out there has really moved into a summer pattern. They got a lot of fish out by the channel. So, you know, if I was going out fishing a tournament, I'd be definitely working on that deep water, 16 feet and deeper. There will be fish off of the point in that 14 to 16 foot range out there, out by those humps that are out there and those grass flats. Same thing goes up in the north end of the lake, although up there those fish are going to be a little more scattered on those flats, and the flats are generally shallower. So you're going to have to work a little harder up on that north end. But there's still plenty of smallies out there to be caught. And the guys that know where to look are catching some big smallies out there. So, you know, it's not like the fishing is done by any stretch of the imagination. And I think you're going to see some big weights come in this weekend in the tournaments, as long as Mother Nature cooperates. Perch fishing, same thing. Out there by the channel, guys are taking a lot of perch mixed in with those walleyes. But I also got reminded from some other friends this week, watching their posts online, you don't always want to overlook that shallow water bite. These weeds are up in shallow, and if you remember last year, from 9 miles south all the way down to the yacht club down there, they were taking a lot of perch starting at this time of the year, and that is happening again. And you should try starting out shallow on these fish. 10 foot of water and then work your way out. You'd be amazed, especially again on these blow days when that light penetration gets knocked down. You can catch some very, very respectable catches of perch in shallow, especially when you get down into those weed beds down on that south end of the lake. Same thing goes up onto that north end of the lake. Up in those cuts up by the Snai and up on that north end up there, there's perch coming in there too, and some of those fish are crazy shallow at this time of the year. So it's not always a deep bite. I had a mentor a long time ago tell me there's always a deep bite and there's always a shallow bite, and that's always true. It's just a matter of being at the right place at the right time. Another species of fish that I've been meaning to mention, and with these storms coming in, and I saw a post online today regarding that, is that when we get these rainstorms, sometimes those rainstorms, if you're a catfish fisherman, it can really ring the dinner bell. And sometimes when you get these long dry spells and then you get these storms come in, those fish come in force, especially like at the mouth of the Clinton River, the mouth of the spillway, even the mouth like of the Metro Park there, Black Creek. But anywhere where you've got runoff going out into the main lake after these rainstorms, generally it's like a 12-hour rule. It's usually right after that rain, sometimes right after the rain or within 12 hours that water is at its peak. It can be really hard to fish when it's at its peak volume flowing out, but those cats are going to be there. So sometimes you got to wait for that volume to go down just a little bit so it's more fishable. But man, can you get some big catches of channel cats at the mouths of these different waterways here on the American side on St. Clair. Muskie fishing out there, I know it's hard for you guys fishing on the American side, but if you want to go out and target them, you can still definitely catch some fish. I would focus on the main forage areas. Focus on where these guys are catching all the perch and walleyes. Wherever you've got all that biomass is where you're going to find those big skis. And you know, over by the dumping grounds this time of the year, northeast corner of the dump, along the channel banks out there, you're going to find muskies out there. So you're going to have to work a little harder on the American side. You may have days when you get too much boat traffic or a lot of floating weeds, but the fish are there and they're definitely worth going after. Water temperature, 75 degrees out there. We're about at our peak temps for the year. And so that, you know, it just means these fish are in full-blown summertime pattern. So fish accordingly out there on the lake, and I think you will do well. Hey, if you like this video content and you want to get updated as soon as the next video is out there, hit that subscribe button and a little bell icon, and you'll get notified as soon as the next video is up.